Maybe we could all live like billionaires with robotic servants. Just as billionaires have human servants, artificial intelligence robotics is getting so advanced that we could have robots that could be programmed to be our servants. So every one of us could live like billionaires with robotic servants, and I call this billionaire roboticism. In this episode, for our robot, I'm going to feature Lego Mindstorms. For our American billionaire, I'm going to feature Tim Sweeney. For our Native American chief, I'm going to feature Chief Colorow, the Ute chief. And yes, the Native American chiefs, I consider them the billionaires of their time. For our Canadian billionaire, I'm going to feature Wallace McCain. And for our Canadian First Nation chief, I'm going to feature Chief Maquinna. And yes, I consider him a billionaire of his time. For Australia, I'm going to feature Australian billionaire Anthony Pratt. And for our Australian Aboriginal important figure, I'm going to feature Mokare. And yes, I consider prominent Aborigines the billionaires of their time. For our British billionaire, I'm going to feature Lloyd Dorfman, a UK billionaire. And for our UK English king, I'm going to feature King Henry V. For our European billionaire, I'm going to feature German billionaire Hasso Plattner. And for our European king, I'm going to feature Francis I of France. And for our South American, king, I'm going to feature Manco Capac, the king governor or the emperor of the Cusco tribe. The Cusco Empire was the ancestors of the Inca. So the Cusco are the ancestors of the Inca. Now, how are we going to achieve billionaire roboticism? Well, it's right here. In order to achieve this, we need millions of more roboticists. So we need millions of more people that know about robotics. So our number one goal is to make robotics a requirement in all public schools grades K through 12 and a requirement class in universities and a requirement for private schools if they want to receive government funds. That way we can have millions of more roboticists, businesses and foundations that promote billionaire roboticism so we can make it more popular, online videos and web ventures to make billionaire roboticism more popular. And we want to pass laws that will make it a requirement that everyone must live in extreme wealth. In other words, everyone must live like a billionaire and live like a wealthy king or queen with robotic servants. So now let's go to our first billionaire, American billionaire Tim Sweeney. Now, Tim Sweeney is an American video game programmer, a billionaire businessman, and he's the founder and CEO of Epic Games. And he created the Unreal Engine, a game development platform. Now, here's a picture of Tim Sweeney. There's a picture of Tim Sweeney. He was born in 1970. He's aged 49 to 50 in Potomac, Maryland. That's very close to Washington, D.C. He went to the University of Maryland, and he's got a net worth this is in February 2020 of $7.2 billion. And remember, these net worth changes. They have a daily billionaire index, so it could be more or less right now. Now, he's the youngest of three brothers, and he really liked tinkering with mechanical stuff. When he was 5 or 6, he would take apart lawnmowers. Now, he became very interested in arcade games in the late 1970s. He would take them apart and repair them. At the age of 11, he started to learn BASIC. And when he got an Apple II, he started to learn how to program his own video game. He tried to make a game called Adventure 2. And he played this game Adventure when he was younger. So he tried to make Adventure 2. Now, from the ages of 11 to 15, he spent over 10,000 hours teaching himself how to program. And he was an entrepreneur. He went around and he mowed lawns in the neighborhood for money. In 1989, he attended the University of Maryland, studied mechanical engineering. His father worked for the Defense Mapping Agency, and he gave him an IBM personal computer AT. So Sweeney got into the consulting business, Potomac Computer Systems, out of his parents' home. The company never really did take off, so Sweeney started thinking about, hey, you know what? I can start making video games and selling them, because that's what he was doing, when he was younger. So he made his own his text editor based on Pascal. He called it ZZT. That means through this he was able to make video games. So he would, he would he'll tell his friends to try these games out, and have his friends, people he knew, ask him, hey, what do you think of this game? You think it's pretty good? So he was getting feedback, on these games that he was making. He started to sell video games, and fulfilling mail orders and stuff, and he was making about $100 a day. So he can realize, hey, you know what? This is what I'm going to do full time. So he changed the name from Potomac Computer Systems to Epic Mega Games. Now, there's another picture of Sweeney right there. There's another picture of Sweeney. He started to work on his next video game called Jill of the Jungle. He found out that it was too complicated, so he needed help. So he got help. He hired some people, and he got a new partner. This is his partner right here, Mark Rain. This guy helped him out a lot in the business. So the company really started to grow when he got this guy, Mark Rain. He then made another game called Unreal Engine. This is a first-person shooter game. Yeah, these first-person shooter game where you shoot like a gun. This is one of them right here. So he developed a game like that. And there's a picture of the game Unreal that he developed. Unreal. Yeah, it looks like it's a pretty cool game to play. Video games are very, very fun, very addictive. So this game right here, Unreal, it made the company very, very successful. He ended up changing the name to Epic Games, and now he's a billionaire. He's a conservationist. He cares about the environment. He acquired about 50,000 acres of land in the state of North Carolina, and he donated one is called the Box Creek Wilderness, which he donated the conservation easement to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Another one, he has participated in the expansion of the Mount Mitchell State Park by donating 1,500 acres to a conservation project. So he wants to save the more than 130 rare and threatened plants and wildlife species in this area. And here's another video game that's doing very well. It's called Gears of War that he produced. Gears of War. There's a picture, and yeah, it's a very, very popular game. Yeah, this game from Epic has sold over 3 million copies within 10 weeks of it coming out. It's the 6th most popular game ever played on the Xbox 360. And Wired Magazine ended up giving this guy a rave reward in 2007 for his work on Unreal Engine 3, the technology behind the blockbuster Gears of War video game. And now for our Native American chief, we're going to talk about Chief Colorow of the Ute Native American tribe. There is Chief Colorow. There's a picture of Chief Colorow. Now, I consider the Native American chiefs like the leaders of the time. I would call them the billionaires of their time. Since they were chiefs, they had control most of the resources of the Native American tribes. So I call them like billionaires and leaders, and we have to look up to our Native American chiefs. We should look up to billionaires for being very successful and look up to Native American chiefs. And every one of us could live like billionaires or live like Native American chiefs or live like kings or queens with robotic servants. Now, he was placed in the Jefferson County Hall of Fame for contributions. Look at this. He made to our country and indeed our state and nation. He was a Ute chief of the Ute Mountain Utes, skilled horseman. And the state of Utah is named after the Ute Native tribe, the Ute Native American tribe. And his name is Colorow, and Colorow is right next to Utah. So, Colorado is not named after him, but it's very close to Colorado. Colorow sounds like Colorado. Now, Colorow was born a Comanche in about 1810. 5 years later, there was a battle in northern New Mexico, and he got kidnapped by the Moshe band of Utes, so he became a Ute native. He received the nickname Red or Colorado for his particularly red skin as compared to the Utes. So he had very red skin. That was his nickname. The Muachi Utes, their homeland is from the farthest north is around Denver, Colorado, down south into Las Vegas, New Mexico. So that was like their territory. Now, he was a skilled horseman, and he had he knew a lot of people. He knew chiefs of other tribes, fur trappers, military men, and the Spanish. Now, this guy is really tough. In 1856, a band of Arapaho and Cheyenne stole about 40 Ute horses from him. This is one of his friends. So he with this guy's name is Ure. Ure is one of his friends, and Colorow, they fought for the stolen horses, and look at this. Although outnumbered 8-1, they were able to retrieve them, and they killed 4 of their enemy. So they were outnumbered 8-1, and they got the horses back. So they're really tough, man. This guy Colorow's tough. Yeah, in 1873, he met Ulysses S. Grant in Denver to negotiate some Native American treaties. So this guy actually met President Ulysses S. Grant. That's really cool. He was a tough guy. He was involved in conflicts. The one was the Meeker Massacre. Another one, it was a whole war named after him. It was called Colorow's War. He married 3 women and had 9 kids. And he died on the Ouray Reservation on December 11th, 1888. He was buried 3 days later. Places named for him, all these places in Colorado: Colorow's Cave Elementary School, Colorow Mountain, Colorow Point Park in Golden, Colorado. So Chief Colorow, a great leader of his time, and I call him a billionaire of his time. And again, we could all live like billionaires and live like chiefs, live like kings and queens with robotic servants. And now for our Canadian billionaire, we're going to talk about billionaire Wallace McCain. Wallace McCain, he was born in April 1930, was a Canadian businessman, co-founder of McCain Foods Limited. In November 2015, he had a net worth of about $3.5 billion. McCain was ranked as the 13th wealthiest person in Canada. And again, remember, that was November 2015. These figures do change. And there's his food, McCain Foods Limited. He co-founded this company right here. They make frozen food. Now, this is where he was born. Florenceville in New Brunswick. And look at this. Its motto is the French fry capital of the world. That's a really cool name. The place has a cool covered bridge, the Florenceville Bridge across the St. John River, which is partly covered. Yeah, and there it is. There's the covered bridge right there. Now, his father was the owner of a seed potato exporting business. His father, Andrew Davis McCain. Now, she married Margaret McCain. That's his wife. And Margaret McCain became the first female lieutenant governor of New Brunswick. And New Brunswick is a really beautiful place. In 2007, he gave almost $1 million to this university, Mount Allison University. And in 2011, he gave almost $5 million to the University of New Brunswick. I think he gave exactly $5 million to the University of New Brunswick. That's their motto right there. On May 13, 2011, he died. He was 81 years old. He died in Toronto, Ontario. Now, he founded this company, McCain Foods, in 1956 with his brother. It became one of the world's biggest frozen food companies. In the 1990s, there was a prolonged legal battle between the two brothers over who would be succeeding the company. So Wallace's son, Michael, and Scott McCain, they left, and his son started Maple Leaf Food right here, Maple Leaf Foods. And there's a logo of Maple Leaf Foods. That's the logo as of 2018. Now, the two brothers, they didn't get along, but in 2004, when Harrison was sick, Wallace visited him in the hospital. So apparently they got better. They got along better now. So Wallace ended up teaming up with the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, and they ended up buying Maple Leaf Foods. His son, Michael McCain, is currently the CEO of Maple Leaf Foods. You can see right there. In 1995, he was made an officer of the Order of Canada. Yeah, there's the insignia for the Order of Canada. He was known as one of Atlantic Canada's most notable entrepreneurs. In 1993, he was conducted to the Canadian Business Hall of Fame. So in 1993, he was into the Canadian Business Hall of Fame. And in 2003, he was inducted into the Order of New Brunswick. Yeah, there's the insignia for the Order of New Brunswick. And now for our Canadian First Nations chief, it's Canadian First Nations Chief Maquinna. There's a picture of Chief Maquinna right here. The Chief Maquinna, Mowachach chief. He was chief of the Nuu-chah-nulth people. And there's a picture of 3 Nuu-chah-nulth children. The area where they reside was Nootka Sound. You can see a map right there. That square is Nootka Sound. That's Vancouver Island in British Columbia. That's a very beautiful place. The most beautiful trees, wildlife everywhere. Real beautiful place. This is a very famous picture, John Weber's Man of Nootka Sound. I've seen this picture quite a bit in Native American, like histories of Native Americans. So this is a famous picture of the people of Nootka Sound. He was chief during the heyday, or when the maritime fur trade was very popular, right there in the Pacific Northwest coast. He was a chief then. His name means possessor of pebbles. So that's cool. He possesses rocks, pebbles, small rocks. That's his name, possessors of pebbles. And I love these First Nation names, these Native American names and Canadian First Nations. They got really, really in with nature. Possessor of pebbles is a really cool name. His tribe is now known as the Mowachach Muchalat First Nations. And today they mostly reside right here in this area, Gold River. As you can see on the map, that's where it is in British Columbia, Gold River right there. Most of them reside in that area. It says right here, Maquinna was a very powerful chief whose summer coastal village was in Yuquot. This was an important anchorage point for the European powers trying to, gain claim of this territory. Captain James Cook visited this place in 1778, and he might have met Chief Maquinna, he might have not, but he called it Friendly Cove. And one of our goals is to create the UK, Canada, Australia, and the US becoming one country. And Captain James Cook, he explored that part of Canada. He mapped it really well, the Nootka area on up into Alaska from Oregon. And he also mapped, very famous for mapping the east coast of Australia. Sydney Harbor, it was because of Captain James Cook's maps. Juan Perez was here in 1774, and he tried to claim the place for Spain. Juan Perez was the first known European to site, examine, name, and record the islands near present-day British Columbia, including, that area right here, Nootka. The Russians had a lot of activity in this area also. Now, in 1788, this guy, John Mears, he claimed that he bought some land from Maquinna. This guy used this claim that he bought land from Chief Maquinna as the justification that land belonged to Britain now. And Spain also wanted Vancouver Island. The Spanish were planning to colonize it. And the Russians were involved in this. And there were even rumors of Americans trying to move up into this area. There was a thing called the Nootka Convention. It was known as the Nootka Crisis. And this Nootka Crisis right here in this area, there was almost going to be war over this area, but they had a Nootka Convention and everything was resolved peacefully. The British were able to claim this area, and there was like 4 different countries that were almost about to lay claims to this area: Russian, Spanish, and British. And the rumors of later on the Americans coming into the area, and the Americans established a border in present-day Canada. So this guy he claimed that he bought land from Chief Maquinna. He claimed he bought the land from Chief Maquinna, and that was his claim for that land belonging to the British. Maquinna worshipped at the Yuko Whalers Shrine. This was a prayer house or washing house. There's a more close-up picture of the shrine with the figures in there. And this is a picture that the guy John Mears, he made a picture, and that's Maquinna right there in this picture. There's Maquinna. And again, remember, he said that because of Maquinna, he bought that land, and that land belongs to the British. Now, here's a picture of Maquinna's hat. This is his hat. This is his hat in the museum. This is Maquinna's hat in the Museum of the Americas in Madrid. That's a picture of his hat. You could see the whales there. They were really good whale hunters. They would go out there in those canoes and hunt whales in this area, the Native American. And I've lived there before. I know they did that. They do whale hunting. And there's a picture of him, in a canoe hunting a whale. Maquinna's interesting. He is noted. He has kept European slaves. This guy has kept European slaves. He attacked a ship called the Boston. He massacred almost everybody on board, but he let some people survive, and they became his slaves. And he said this was in response to retaliation because of what the Spanish the Spanish and the Americans did terrible things to them in the past. So that's why they retaliated and they attacked his ship and took it. One of the slaves, his name was John R. Jewett. That was one of Maquinna's slaves. And he wrote a record of him being a captive, what it was like being his slave. And and this guy, in 1805, this guy Samuel Hill came to the rescue. See, Samuel Hill, what he did is when he came there, he tricked Maquinna into coming on board the ship. Then he put him in irons and chains, and he told the people, the tribesmen, that he's going to kill their chief unless there's a prisoner exchange. So Maquinna ended up being traded slave. So John R. Jewett, Maquinna's slave, he got traded for Chief Maquinna. So it was like a prisoner exchange. There is a Maquin Marine Provincial Park named after him in British Columbia. There's a picture of the park here. And I've been here. This is the most beautiful part of the country. The rainforest here in British Columbia, northern Washington, it's absolutely beautiful. And this is like just a lot of rain here, beautiful trees. I'm sure it's absolutely beautiful. There's also an active submarine mud volcano, an underwater mud volcano about 16 to 18 kilometers west of Vancouver Island, in the name of Maquinna. And now for our Australian billionaire. It's Australian billionaire Anthony Pratt. Anthony Pratt, there's his picture. He was born in 1960, and he is the chairman of VC Industries. His father started VC Industries. So he's a son. He is his son, and he took over the family business. VC has become the world's largest privately owned paper, packaging, and recycling companies. It's one of the world's largest. His net worth in 2019 was about $6.8 billion. But again, remember, these numbers change all the time. There are daily billionaire indexes, and they change every day. So it could be different now, but that was in 2019. A picture of his father, Richard Pratt. Richard Pratt started VC Industries. There's a picture of him right there. As you can see, that's his picture. He graduated from Monash University in 1982 with a degree in economics. And there's Monash's University insignia. This university is in Victoria, Australia. Now, this is a pretty recent picture because these politicians are still in power. He's next to Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison and U.S. President Donald Trump. He's giving a tour of Pratt Industries plant to Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison and U.S. President Donald Trump. I do remember President Trump was visiting Australia. And my our We Like Women Pride Army, not to mention, we do want to create this UK, Canada, Australia, and the US becoming one country. We're very active in trying to do this and encouraging the billionaires of Australia, US, and Canada, and the UK to do more mergers and joint ventures might be a good way to do that. We also want to encourage a European, American, Australian, Canadian Union, the billionaires of Europe, Australia, Canada, and the US to do a lot more working together. And we even encourage, this might take a little longer, but it might not, Europe, North America, South America, and Australia getting together, and so the billionaires of Europe, North America, South America, and Australia getting together and doing a lot more working together to, when you bring economies together, that's the main factor in bringing countries together. He joined McKinsey & Company. He was a management consultant before he worked there. Then he went to work for his father's company, VC, and now he's the chairman of VC. He was very successful in expanding Pratt Industries into the United States. Pratt Industries grew from the 46th largest corrugated box producer in the U.S. to the 5th largest. This guy's a really good environmentalist. Look at this. It is the only major paper container board company that is 100% recycled. So that's very important. Everything's 100% recycled. It's the only major paper company for container boards doing that. So that's very environmental. It says on the 17th of December 2013, this guy, Mayor Michael Bloomberg of New York, so you can see there's a picture of Bloomberg right there. He claimed September 17, 2013, Pratt Industries Day. This guy really knows politicians, man. Michael Bloomberg, Donald Trump, Scott Morrison. Look at this. And in 2017, he opened. Sorry, I didn't read it right. In 2013, then Governor Mike Pence officially opened a plant that he had. I'm assuming in Indiana, close to Chicago. So this guy's already friends with, he knows Bloomberg, Scott Morrison, Donald Trump, and Mike Pence. There's our Vice President Mike Pence. He opened up a plant for this guy. And in 2017, this governor Scott Walker of Wisconsin, there's another picture of Scott Walker you can see right there. Scott Walker. He opened up a plant in Wisconsin. He is definitely an environmentalist. He's a member of the Climate Group. The Climate Group, was started by this guy, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. Yeah, there's a better picture of Tony Blair right there. Man, this guy really knows all these politicians, presidents, and political leaders. Now Prime Minister Tony Blair, they're in the same group. And this environmental group, Global Green USA, guess who? Another famous politician started this one. It was started by Mikhail Gorbachev. There's Gorbachev right there. And yeah, there's another close-up picture of Gorbachev. So this guy really knows his politicians, man. These are all world leaders. And another famous person, Ted Turner, the guy who started CNN. Ted Turner's Captain Planet Foundation. Yeah, there's another good picture of Ted Turner, as you can see right there. But his Captain Planet Foundation also praised this guy, Pratt. It just goes on and on. Now President Clinton's global initiative, the Clinton Foundation, he committed to former President Clinton's global initiative to invest more than $1 billion over the ensuing decade in recycling infrastructure and clean energy. So he really knows his politician, and it just keeps going on and on. Famous people here, famous people there. So he knows politicians inside and out. And this is kind of cool. He's a member of the Australian-American Leadership Dialogue, which seeks to strengthen and deepen the ties between Australian and American leaders. And, my movement, the We Like Women Pride Army, not only do we want billionaire roboticism, we want to make the U.S., Australia, Canada like one country or one union. That's one of our goals. So that's really cool. And now for Australia, our Australian famous Aborigine, it's the Aborigine Mokare. And this is Mokare right here. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it Mokare or Mokare, but yeah, I'm just going to call it Mokare, but I might be pronouncing it wrong, so please forgive me if I do pronounce it wrong. And remember, he is a billionaire of his time. The Aborigine chiefs, I would call them the billionaires of their time. So we could all live like billionaires and Aboriginal chiefs, and kings and queens with robotic servants. Now, this is the statue of Mokare in Albany, Western Australia. And there's a map of where Albany, Western Australia is on the map of Australia. As you can see, Albany's right there. Here, this is a really cool plaque. I'll read the plaque. It's Mokare, a man of peace, 1826. In recognition of the role Mokare played in the peaceful coexistence between Noongar people and the first European settlers. A reconciliation project jointly funded by the Aboriginal Affairs Department and the town of Albany. This plaque was unveiled by Noongar elder Mrs. Margaret Williams and her worship, the mayor, Mrs. Annette Knight, AMJF, on the, I believe it says 18th of April, 1997. I could be wrong, but I think that's what it says. The tiles produced by school children of the Great Southern Region. There's another statue of Mokare. You see right here, that's a statue of Mokare right there. Mokare was an Aboriginal man from the southwest corner of Australia who was pivotal, that means very important, in aiding, in creating a European explorer, and aiding the European exploration of the area. He had two brothers, Molian, who may have been known as Yalapali, and Nakina, who, with Mokare, they were frequent visitors out to the Albany settlement. When they go to Albany, they would stay with the government resident, Dr. Alexander Colley. This guy, Philip Parker King, he was a very famous explorer of the Australian area. He would probably call this guy, I think he called him Charismatic Jack. So he called Mokare Charismatic Jack. That's what he might have done. He might have not done it, but he might have. This guy explored parts of Australia and Patagonian coast, which is present-day Argentina, Chile, that area. This guy would explore this area, King George Sound, and they think he called Mokare the Charismatic Jack, Aborigine. So it says right here, possibly first recorded as a Charismatic Jack. Mokare he was from the Minang clan of the Noongar. When this guy, Edmund Lockyer, arrived here in this area on this ship, this is a replica of the ship, the Amity. This is a replica of the ship that they first arrived in, the Amity. This guy, Mokare, helped. They arrived in 1827 on this ship, and Mokare would help them out. He would show the Europeans the walking trails that the Noongar people had used and maintained over generations in this Albany region. Many of these are today the roads of that region in Australia. In 1829, Mokare helped guide this guy, Thomas Braidwood Wilson, in exploring this area of Australia. And they helped found Mount Barker, Australia, named Mount Barker. There's a picture of Mount Barker right here. There's a picture of Mount Barker. And also found it and named the Hay River right here. There's the Hay River. And also named the Denmark River. You can see the Denmark River. And also the Wilson Inlet. They helped found the Wilson Inlet. The settlement here in Albany was very, very peaceful, particularly peaceful. And Mokare was one of the reasons was because of Mokare. Yeah. So Mokare was well known in his short life as being a peacemaker. He was an effective mediator between the black and white communities. He was concerned when Sterling took over, when they came in, he has heard of the battles and massacres between the European settlers and the Aborigines, and he wanted Albany to be a very peaceful settlement. And it actually worked. Albany was a very peaceful settlement. Now, Mokare died here on June 26, 1831. They assembled at Colley's house and they walked to a site selected by Maquinna where the Europeans dug up a grave and Mokare was interred with a buka cloak. The buka cloak is a cloak traditionally worn by the Noongar people, the indigenous people of Southwest Australia. That's Mokare's tribe. Colley himself died in 1835. Dr. Alexander Colley, the governor of the guy where Mokare would go visit him, and he has to be buried alongside Mokare. Their graves are together beneath Albany Town Hall. And there's a picture of Albany Town Hall. There's a picture of Albany Town Hall right here in Western Australia. And now for our South American king, Manco Capac. Manco Capac was the founder of the Cusco civilization, which are the ancestors of the Inca. Now, we could all live like kings or queens, and kings or queens of these South American civilizations, like the Inca, the Cusco, the Aymayrans, and there's many other really great South American civilizations. So we're all going to live like kings or queens. So this guy is like a billionaire of his time. That's what I call it. And remember, it's my opinion in calling him a billionaire of his time, but wealthy king of his time. So every one of us could live like Manco Capac. We could all live like billionaires with robotic servants. And this also falls into my goal of making, Europe, North America, and South America, and Australia, we're all going to be one great big country or one big union. And every one of us in Europe, North America, South America, and Australia, we're going to live like wealthy kings or queens like Manco Capac, or, like billionaires, with robotic servants. Every one of us. We're going to be one big happy country, and we're all going to live like billionaires with robotic servants, or like wealthy kings or queens with robotic servants. Now, he was the first governor and founder of the Inca civilization in Cusco, and this is the before the Inca Empire, Cusco, right there. That's on the map. Now, his main wife was his older sister, This was his main wife, his older sister, Mama Okle. So that was his main wife. And their son, Sinchi-Roka, Emperor Sinchi-Roka, that's his son right there. And remember, we could all live like emperors with robotic servants. So we have to look up, to these historical emperors as kind of like kind of like guiding lights. Every one of us could live like an emperor with robotic servants. He was born in the city of Tamputoko. And here's the walls of Kolkapata, which served as Manco Capac's. It served as Manco Capac's palace. Here's a picture of the historical walls. Yeah, Manco Kupo and his son, Sinchi-Roka, they would often have to defend their city against other tribes. They would get attacked often. Now, when he died, he was buried here. He was mummified. The mummified body of Manco Capac came to rest here at the temple at Tiwanaku. I apologize. When he died in Cusco, but later on, a later emperor, Pachacuti, I believe he was like the 9th emperor in this dynasty, started from the Cusco, and I'm not sure if it's his direct descendant. He moved his mummified body from where he lay to rest in Cusco to this temple at Tiwanaku. There's still a statue in Cusco in his honor. Now, one of the legends of Manco Capac is that he was like a god. Now, Inti is a sun god, so he is the son of Inti, the sun god. And this is Inti, the sun god, on the flag of Peru. There's Inti, the sun god. And his mother was the moon goddess, Mama Kia. So he was the son of the sun. The sun god Inti was his father, and the moon goddess Mama Kia was his mother. So that's kind of interesting. He was, he's like a divine god. His father was a sun god, his mother was a moon god. So that's one of the legends of Manco Capac, and all of his descendants were descendants from the sun god. So it's kind of interesting, how we're all going to live like billionaires with robotic servants. In history, a lot of times, we look up to people, we look up to kings and queens, and there have been many instances where kings and queens have been worshipped as like gods, and emperors have been worshipped as like gods. So like every one of us living like billionaires with robotic servants can, in a sense, we could all be like worshipping billionaires as gods in a sense. What I mean by that is like, when you worship someone, you look up to them. So we look up to billionaires as like a role model, billionaires and robots and robotics, or we look up to robotics as our role model. So every one of us could live like a billionaire, or live like, like this emperor here, this king Manco. Every one of us could live like this emperor, King Manco Capac. Every one of us could live like a sun god with robotic servants. This is all very figure of speech, but what I mean is we look up to like, we're all going to live in extreme wealth with robotic servants. Thank you for watching my videos. Everything here is public domain, and if Wikipedia Creative Commons Attributions, and I try my best to make sure that every picture, appropriate Creative Commons attributions are in every picture, unless it's a public domain picture. Look out for future videos, and remember, let's live like billionaires with robotic servants.